So we'll kick this off with a quick introduction by our webinar leader, who is Craig Scott, owner of MFGx, software integration and consulting company, and the makers of Fuuz, the applications platform that you're going to learn more about today, and also how that truly enables Industry 4.0. Again, we welcome you to submit questions using the Q&A that's available to you, and we want to work those into the presentation as we go along. So having said that, Craig, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. So welcome everybody, and thanks for taking the time out of your busy days to join us here and learn a little bit more about Fuuz and one of our great customers, MPI, and how they've leveraged the platform. So I want to start off a little bit just talking about how, briefly, how our industry in general loves to create new words for things. As you're all aware of, we hear Industry 4.0, IoT, all these different concepts that come at us on a daily basis through social media and other channels. And really, at the end of the day, what we're all interested in is having a truly connected enterprise where people, processes, machines, software, ERP systems, and MES solutions are all collecting and sharing the same data across the company and with our global partners. And that's what we're going to really focus on today, is specifically how Fuuz can help you address that. So a little more about what we're covering today. Even though the focus of the webinar is on my conversation with Mark, it's all about how we're going to achieve Industry 4.0. No manufacturing business has ever reached out to me or my company because they have an Industry 4.0 problem. They just have a problem or problems, and they know, hey, these are the guys to go to. So Mark and I are going to talk a little bit about the industry, how things have changed since COVID, and emerging business and technology trends. We'll discuss MPI, where Mark is the head of IT, a little bit about their challenges, the solutions they were looking for, and how Fuuz helped them solve problems and laid the foundation for continued success. And lastly, I'll take some time to talk about Fuuz, what it is, what it does, and why it's important to manufacturing businesses. First, a little bit about myself. Many of you know who I am. We've worked together over the years, but there's some things that you may not know. Obviously, I love cars and things that go fast and make a lot of noise. But beyond that, you know, from a professional perspective, I spent almost 2 decades of my career working in tier 1 manufacturing companies. I was not in IT, believe it or not. I actually have 0 IT background. I graduated from college with 2 degrees in engineering and 1 master's in manufacturing engineering. So I really am a manufacturing guy at heart. I love making things. I've owned a tool and die shop in the past. I've programmed G code and M code. And through that experience, I was able to really meet a lot of interesting people and do a lot of interesting things. To kind of start off, one of the first companies I worked for as an engineering manager, we had a AS400 ERP system that was running CMS. And some of you folks probably been around long enough to know what that is. I couldn't stand it. It was this green screen thing. It was very intimidating to me. It was scary. I was a young engineer out of college. I was, you know, first generation to have a smartphone, all that kind of thing. So what I learned from this experience of working with this on-premise solution, however, was the flexibility that it offered us as a company. We had programmers. Just about anything that I needed done, I could go to them and say, hey, can you guys, you know, do X, Y, and Z? And within hours or days or whatever time frame, you know, we had that solution. So I thought that was great. You know, I was able to lead my engineering department at that company. At the time I joined, we had about a dozen engineers, and we were launching about 250 to 300 new products every year. And we were able to, with all of the enhancements that we drove through our IT department, we were able to reduce the size of our engineering team down to about six, so about 50% reduction. And we were launching at that point about 800 new part numbers on an annual basis. So it really just, I got very intrigued by that and thought that was amazing. And, you know, boy, if this was really our competitive advantage. And a lot of these things I learned over the years is what led us to developing the Fuuz platform today. As you guys know, with modern cloud ERPs, there are challenges, right? The whole concept of cloud multi-tenant is to make things simple and easy to install or implement, right? But they're configurable in nature. They're not like an AS400. They're not like some of these older legacy systems that you could extend and had full control of. So this is really some of the promise that Fuuz brings to our customers, and we're really proud about that. This really has been a lifelong goal for me to launch this product. I didn't know when I was an engineer what type of product ultimately I would launch. I thought it'd be something physical you could hold in your hand, maybe a new muffler or catalytic converter, or some new stamping technology. I really didn't know. I just knew I wanted to do something. I had no clue that it would lead me to developing a software application. So it's kind of ironic, that here I am now working with a lot of you guys out there in the manufacturing world, helping you implement a technology that's giving you the same capabilities that that I had learned were super important and were a competitive advantage to my prior experience. So thank you guys all again for participating in this webinar, and that's a little bit about me. So I'm gonna move on here and talk a little bit about our guest speaker today, Mark McDonald. So Mark, you wanna join in here and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about MPI?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Craig. I've been at MPI for 11 years, and I actually came out of the ERP industry before joining MPI. I worked for an organization that offered bolt-ons or enhancements to other ERP systems, specifically focused around warehouse management, transportation management. What we found was, it was a space where, again, a lot of legacy ERPs had many core functions designed, but there were these new things called web APIs and that enhancements out that you could plug into transportation management for scheduling or rating and other things. And so there was a great space for bolt-ons and integration, which Craig will obviously talk a little bit more about later. But that was the background I came out of, and then I transitioned to MPI in 2011, which in some ways was actually like transitioning to one of my customers in the previous role, in that MPI was on a legacy ERP that was all on premise, and there were a lot of options for evaluating going forwards. And like many other organizations, we made the decision to look at cloud and begin to remove ourselves from the on-premise footprint. And we ultimately settled on Plex ERP and began a multi-year deployment of Plex. And really, that is how where I ultimately got to where connected with Craig, as we are a shop that enjoys doing a lot of in-house development. We're a multiple operating companies in the metal forming space, and we had a slitting shop, a stamping shop, a heat treating shop, and in the previous ERP, we had written a number of applications that could look across these operating companies and unify things together. And while there was certainly some enterprise options in Plex, our team, our IT team and development team, was not used to not having the capability to build forms or tools at the level that we had with on-premise. And after we got our first first couple of sites up, we began to look for opportunities, other products, other solutions that were going to allow us to fabricate what we needed to get the connectivity, the visibility, um, and basically the tools that we needed to see data in the way that we were not only used to seeing it, but what would give us the competitive advantage. And so that's how we connected to Craig when he was at Cumulus Consulting, and kind of grew from there, just in finding out about the Fuuz product and what its possibilities were, and how it might start enabling some integration in our different newly integrated Plex sites.
Thanks, Mark. That's awesome. And I know we're going to hear more more from you in a few more slides about more details along those lines. But thanks for the introduction. So this slide here talks a little bit about some different statistics, right? And these are great. Numbers tell stories. It's a little surprising that half of the manufacturers have migrated to the cloud, right? 53.1% of organizations today choose cloud over on-premise. That number is growing all the time, as we know. And if you look at some of the other statistics here, 76.5% of those companies are choosing a SaaS model ERP. That's significant, right? Because SaaS is really where everything is going. There's multiple advantages to single source, multi-tenant SaaS models. You get all the security and scalability and all those fantastic selling points. Of course, you get the annual subscription that comes along with it, but typically the benefits definitely outweigh the costs, right? With growing concerns around cybersecurity and all these other things going on, you definitely need to be looking this route. The last statistic here, kind of the ugly one, is that more than half, close to 60% of the organizations who implement ERP systems experience budget overruns. I'm sure if you guys have been through an ERP implementation, which most of you have, this probably resonates with you. And there's a reason for that, which we're going to get into here, just in a second. But this is really where we start to see a divergence from that concept of on-prem, able to deliver anything, anytime, wherever, to cloud SaaS, where there are limitations. And those limitations are there not to frustrate people, but they're there by design. Technically, they have to be there in order to provide the service that's being provided. And that's really why we have focused so heavily on the Fuuz product and what we can bring to market based on a completely different technology. And this breaks me into the next spirit of our conversation here, which is ERP implementations, especially SaaS cloud, are really more of an installation these days than they are an implementation. And so I've got some anecdotes here. If you think about the definitions of an implementation versus an installation, think about buying an appliance, right? You buy a new refrigerator, dishwasher, you have those things installed in your home, right? You buy it, you go to the store, you check it out, you demo it, it's got all the features, at least on the surface, that you believe you need. It's the right color, great. We buy it, it shows up, it's installed, we're using it. An implementation it's a series of steps and decisions that require very thoughtful design and development. It's never intended to be quick or easy or painless. And some of you may be saying, well, wait a minute, we went through an ERP implementation and we had a lot of these steps and decisions. But the point of this is that it's not the same anymore. as what it used to be with older, larger scale or on-premise ERP solutions, right? Those truly were implementations that were led by very large implementation teams that spent 40 plus hours a week over the course of 18 to 24 months developing and designing the system to do every single thing the way you would need it done perfectly, right? Now what you get is more akin to an installation. You sign up for the software, you get access to the software, you log in. Largely, these projects become data migration efforts more than anything. You have, a handful of options in terms of different configurations that you can set up and you can leverage. And, if there's no configuration to support your business process, then it just isn't there, and you design a workaround. um, and it's, from a personal experience standpoint, right? We've all been there. I can tell you that last summer we moved into a new home, and of course, me being, you know, tech geeky kind of guy, I got to get all new TVs, right? So, I go to the store and I'm evaluating all these different flat screens, and I mean, they all look fantastic now. You can't really go wrong, 4K, whatever you're into. Um, Unbeknownst to me, the TV that I selected to install in my great room, which is, mind you, heavily trafficked by my wife and kids, um, does not have the Hulu app on it. Can you imagine? So, it's got all the other things. I bought this TV under the general assumption, that every TV's got Hulu, right? Just like you might go about buying an ERP or an MES thinking, well, everybody does what I do. So of course the system's gonna do what I need it to do, right? Um, and that's kind of the point, right? That's why we think of these, modern SaaS ERP implementations really as an installation. So I was faced with the same challenges that most of you were implementing in ERP, right? So I've got this nice new TV. It's already up on the wall, it looks beautiful. We love everything about it, but geez, it doesn't have Hulu. So what are we to do, right? We have to augment. I had to figure out a way that I didn't have to look like a goofball and return this TV to the store, and but still make it easy enough for the rest of my family to use. I can work through just about any type of science project. It doesn't scare me off. But if I tell my wife and kids that there's a magic combinations of buttons to press so that you can watch TV, it's never going to fly, right? So that's kind of the same story that we run into over and over and over again when we talk with prospective customers. Why would Fuuz benefit me? What's it going to do for me? And it all starts to kind of correlate. um, and then the buyer's remorse starts to set in, and after a week or two, I finally got it working. I'm thinking, man, maybe I should just take it back to the store before the return policy, right? And I'm sure many of you halfway through your ERP project felt the same way. Maybe we should just pull the plug on this. This is not going as smoothly as we expected. It doesn't quite do everything we wanted it to do, right? So, Mark, I'm gonna ask you. I mean, does any of that kind of resonate with you as far as some of the different projects that you've worked in? I mean, some of these analogies kind of you know like ring true for you as well?
Every part of it rings true, and it is the challenge, in my opinion, of being a project manager or a leader of one of these deployments, because you go through all the efforts and planning. You bring in something, just like you said. It was an ERP that probably fit us 90% of the way, and some of the things that didn't fit, we kind of knew, but then the ones that really shocked were ones that you just would not have expected, to the point to where it was like, so we got to design something, or we got to do something now to make this work that's going to look very clunky, in comparison to what we even had before. And we've multiple times had users then scratching their heads of, we went through all of that only to end up with this instead, something something far worse or something that wasn't nearly as helpful as what there was before. And so, yeah, I find very much in the space that we play in here that that's a very common story or common experience that we've had as well.
I I figured it would be. I've over my career, formerly having worked at Plex and working with so many customers, not just Plex, but other ERP vendors as well. NetSuites and SAPs and Infor, all of these guys out there. It's a very very common story. There's a lot of due diligence done in that evaluation process. There's a lot of demos, there's a lot of questions, but ultimately you can never get every single question answered in that course, right? And you go through the RFPs, and then the big day finally arrives. It's the kickoff meeting, and we're setting expectations, and lo and behold, like you said, there's things that you would have never expected, it almost took for granted, right? And yeah, I mean, we hear it definitely all the time. And the next piece here really speaks to kind of that industry as a whole and kind of what it's become. And the fact that point solutions are supplemental apps, right? So these can be like ERP or MES bolt-ons. You can think of things like PaceJet and Celigo and Delboomi and MuleSoft. I mean, you can even go other directions and start thinking about Kepwares and Ignitions and Wonderwares and then BI tools, right? Power BI and Tableau. I know so many customers that have so many bolt-ons. They started down this path of, hey, let's do a cloud ERP system because it's gonna eliminate so many complexities for us, right? We've got this access database and all these spreadsheets, and we got QuickBooks, and we got whatever, and it's gonna get us all on the same page. Everyone's singing from the same sheet of music, and well, unfortunately, that ends up not being the case over time. You end up with 4, 5, 6 different bolt-ons or point solutions, and now you're right back to where you were, only you've spent a tremendous amount of time and effort and frustration to get there. And this is, we really consider our platform to be kind of the anti bolt-on, right? We're the one bolt-on that our customers need to address all of these different point solutions, and we're seeing a lot of value there. And I think, Mark, some of your experience as well with some of the different projects that your team has taken on internally, probably resonates as well, right? I mean, you guys probably started with several different disparate databases and homegrown solutions, all kind of filling certain niche requirements. But now you're able to do that all into a single platform. Do you have anything more that you would add to that conversation about just the path, like where we are now in this industry with all these different bolt-ons?
Yeah, it is interesting. Again, the lure of the simplicity of the cloud is so wonderful in so many ways, and the promise of things like APIs. But ultimately, especially through the last 10 years, through that journey, we had to go through the realization that with some of that simplicity also comes the loss of the total creative control or flexibility to do what we need. And so as we got our Plex databases in place, we realized we couldn't have the complete control. Like in our previous ERP, we could actually build forms and modules that sat within the ERP that could affect multiple of the sites and databases and multiple areas of the business. And we ended up having to start constructing those things as point solutions outside of Plex to accomplish the same thing. We ended up with an external website. We ended up with some external .NET apps that we coded. We ended up with managing some of our own side SQL databases that had their own interfaces, and everything. It all became an exercise in instead of managing our own data center and ERP application servers, suddenly it became, oh, we've got to manage all the infrastructure of these other solutions. And so it was kind of a not quite there on the journey yet, basically from the old ERP to that, which is where, again, as we can kind of step forward into what Fuuz has helped us to start simplifying all of those homegrown things that we created to address the gaps in that system.
Yeah, that's that's exactly what we're seeing as well. And it's like a great place for us to be, right? And we get a lot of customers just like that, with that same story coming to us. Hey, we've got this database, it's wonderful, it does everything we need, but it doesn't talk to our ERP. Or we have whatever, right, 5, 10 different things across different ERP vendors. It's commonplace oftentimes to bring in multiple partners to a demonstration. um, so it's unfortunate, but it's kind of the nature of it. And this is an area that I think we can help address for sure. So again, I started the conversation here mentioning this. um, and we're talking about industry 4.0 here, but the truth about it is that the manufacturers don't come to us for industry 4.0. They're really coming to us for the promise of industry 4.0 and everything being connected, right? So all they know is that they have a problem. And this really leads us into really what we're here today to hear about is from Mark. And we want to get into the solution story of MPI. So with that said, um, Mark, maybe just a little bit of detail from you on, before you and I started working together, lay out the foundation here. I mean, what were you dealing with at, MPI?
Yeah, so again, we're a holding company. MPI is the parent company of multiple manufacturing companies, and we had deployed Plex for some of them, and we were beginning the next ones. And to get through the first ones, we had created a lot of in-house tools. We have a pretty strong and robust in-house development group. Actually, we like to do a lot of our work on the inside if we can. And I think we had come up with some creative. Creative is maybe the good word. Effective may not be the word I would choose or efficient may not be the word I would choose here. But we had some creative solutions in place that were allowing us to really get the data we need into the places we need, get the visibility. We wrote custom tools for production planning, custom tools for creating blanket orders externally and pushing them in, and allowing pricing to flow in and out based on a number of external factors between companies, since we sit in a vertical integration mode between our organizations. And these things were good, again, but they were difficult to maintain. And our users said to us, especially as we were looking at deploying Plex into our next sites, they said, why can't we get some of this data onto the same screen? Or why, we used to have one workbench, or we used to have one tool that would allow us to see all this and to plan this and to do it this way. And now we're seeing this all over the place. And so what we started to see, or was not only the difficulty in that we were going to be writing even more integration apps, but that we were going to be really sprawling into an infrastructure that was going to kind of grow almost to the point of what it was before, negating a lot of the strategy of trying to get to the cloud in the first place. And so what we were looking for was a solution, again, kind of like these other tools that Craig had talked about. We were looking for one that would encompass a lot of those things, something that would allow hooking in wherever we wanted, something that would allow us to do a lot of the tailoring ourselves, because again, we're a shop that we like to do a lot of the work in-house if possible. So we were looking for something where it wouldn't just be us contracted to the outside, but also being able to use the tool internally. And so that's how we started down the Fuuz path. And at the beginning, I think we saw right away the possibility, because the nature of it allowed a allowed us to hook into different databases, including Plex, the main ERP, but some of our other tools, to flow data from multiple places and not only have a screen that we could control and lay out how we wanted, but that also would allow us to have that triggered directly on top of the Plex screens. So it wasn't our users going and opening app number 5. It was just the users going to the Plex screen that they needed, and they could, right there on the Plex screen, there would be an overlay or a button that could be clicked that would allow them to see the other data that they needed for their job, or to trigger the workflow that they needed. So this was the first time that we really had ventured into something that was going to allow us to quickly pull the data into one place, simplifying it for the users, and do it with a tool that was a lot easier to maintain than, instead of building a whole nother app and deploying another app, it was just add another workflow or another flow in Fuuz, add another hover button over the customer order screen because it's, we wanted to see more detail in pricing, or add another set of visibility on the MRP screen in Plex because we needed to see data that wasn't available by default or by any of the options. And so this gave us flexibility and speed that we had not experienced previously with any of our other solutions.
Yeah, that definitely resonates, and I think the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway for me, again, kind of going back to my origin story, is just seeing those measurable results, right? I mean, I think that's huge. There's all the intangible benefits of being cloud, multi-tenant. It's everything's easy to scale. It brings everything back into one system or record of truth for all of your users. um, but that ability to do things and get them out there for your team quickly, and the fact that you guys have been able to take ownership of it, frankly, is even better, right? So the last thing we wanted to deliver to our customers like you is some kind of black box, you know. That doesn't do anybody any good. So that's super great to hear. And I appreciate also, comments like this, Mark. Like Fuuz is like an on-ramp, and your team doesn't have to code or create something from scratch anymore because the platform has those options already available. And I think that's great, right? The standardization of things that we're able to provide, like your team, um, taking it, really abstracting it a bit from being the pseudo, homegrown. Hey, Bill has worked here for 25 years and he's developed all of these applications, and now it's time for Bill to step down. Bill wants to retire. Putting things into a platform like this with, kind of standard methods of implementing different processes and procedures just helps companies like yours make it scalable and repeatable. And, from a support standpoint, right? It's going to be easy to find people that can, come in and look at what you've built and get up to speed pretty quickly. I know your team has gotten up to speed, boy, so quickly. I mean, it makes my head spin. I feel like we met a few times, we did some demos, we did, a handful of training sessions, and then you guys have been off on your own. Every time we talk, you're telling me about some new thing you guys have created, and it just kind of, blows me away.
It's been a very positive experience for us, honestly. Just learning the Fuuz platform and seeing what is possible. We again, yeah, kind of that comment of the in minutes, not in days or whatnot anymore. Now that the team really is familiar with the structure and the possibilities, when users ask for things now and saying, "Wouldn't it be great if?" It's a lot easier for us to envision. Yeah, actually, we could do that pretty easily because it's no longer a matter of having to create a whole separate app or figuring out, are we going to have to do a separate data dump and SP to go put this over here and launch that. Instead, they can really visualize, yeah, we could probably make that pop on the screen simultaneously because we have a platform that's pretty simple to pull what we need right there, and it doesn't have to be tied to something else at that point. And yeah, we've just really appreciated the product itself has grown a lot, even as we're using it and working together with you guys, and it's been a really positive experience for, again, having a dev team using it.
That's awesome, and thank you for all of that. I'm sure the folks on the call today that are just kind of dabbling and considering taking a further look at this, just hearing that, I think is it's almost inspirational in a way, to know that I talked to a lot of people, especially in the IT space, who recently implemented an ERP, and they're like, the worst part of my job, having transitioned from what we had to what we have now, is I have to tell everybody no, right? It's like, every time they come and ask for something, it's like, nope, can't do it. But with the with the addition of Fuuz there, it really it changes that. It's a paradigm shift, right? Now we can say yes, and not only can we say yes, but we can do it ourselves. We don't need to go and spend a bunch of money on the outside with consultants or developers or whatever, right? You guys are fortunate to have a pretty great team in house. Not every company has that, and so that's another reason why us as an organization, we're focusing on developing our own internal team to support companies like yours and others, but also bringing on several new partners throughout the past year as well. If you haven't noticed, I think we have 4 or 5 partners who they go through a certification training program. We get them up to speed, so they're out there now actively helping customers with implementations of their own. So it's been a really positive experience, and I appreciate you saying that as well. So, thanks, Mark, again for all your time and the story.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit now, obviously, about how Fuuz delivers on that Industry 4.0, right? So we've kind of been talking about it this whole time between Mark and I, going back and forth, explaining some key terms, and so on. Um, IT, as we talked about, has unfortunately gotten more complex as time has gone on. And it's not the cloud's fault that things have gotten complicated. It's really it's really kind of a crossroads. It's a result of more product development going into most of these SaaS solutions, right? The From a marketing standpoint and a product development standpoint, everything needs to function as close to a point solution as possible, so that the implementation or installation, whatever you want to call it, is as quick and painless as possible. They want to focus on that time to value, right? When you were buying perpetual licenses for on-premise software, it was less of a problem. Now you're signing up for a subscription, you're paying for it day one, the implementation costs start rolling in. They want to be able to get people live, customers live, and there's just no time to do the true implementation the way it used to be. And that's why things are now boiled down to different configurable options, right? And it's a big data migration project, some training, and then hopefully you go live in a short period of time. And historically, prior to everything kind of moving to the cloud, it was very much custom software. Every ERP implementation, whether it was an AS400 or something like that on premise, it was always a custom software implementation. And we're seeing it more and more in different environments, especially where bigger ERPs are running. We have separate warehouse management systems and separate manufacturing execution and transportation management, data warehouses, BI tools, iPaaS, mobile apps, and then you still have your spreadsheets and your databases and everything else, and the list just goes on and on. So this is where that promise of Industry 4.0 and everything being connected and getting everything where it needs to be so that your company, your business, your end users are efficient as possible has become super critical. And this is where our platform shines. Something we often will tell customers that we're talking to is, we can, as an applications platform, which is what we consider ourselves to be, we're like the anti-point solution. It's like a smartphone. You get a new Android, Apple, whatever your preference is. You take it out of the box, you turn it on. It's most of the things are automatic, but one of the first things that I typically do is I go into the app store and I start installing all of these apps, my bank app and ADP and all these other things that I use on a daily basis to get things done, right? I mean, maybe for you it's Angry Birds, but whatever it is, think of our application platform similar to that, right? There are standard applications that you can install in Fuuz. There's packages that can be shared between customers. There's all sorts of things to make it easy to get started, but ultimately you have the ability to create and develop your own applications from the ground up in a relatively short amount of time. So I wanted to, just jump in here too a little bit that, in addition to the example that we've talked about today with MPI, there's hundreds of other examples of how our platform can enable your business. We have customers that have bridged gaps between ERPs and HCMs and payroll providers. Obviously, we've eliminated, old homegrown proprietary solutions. We've moved them to the cloud. We have customers that um, didn't necessarily need some new functionality, but rather they wanted to position themselves from a technology standpoint so that they weren't dependent on legacy systems or support by specific resources, right? We have had a lot of customers over the years that they've had that developer and was great at RPG or whatever, but we don't have RPG developers sitting around anymore. So we have to move to another language. What do we do? So there's a lot of those stories out there. We have hundreds of them. um, the risk to the business of developing things in house is huge, right? There's security concerns, lack of standardization, lack of scalability, and then the additional cost of having to maintain those homegrown solutions, and of course, make sure you can retain the people that built them, so you're not in a precarious situation, trying to hire these so-called software ninjas to come in and patch programs and keep the wheels on the bus that was built 20 years ago. And all of those things really have brought us to the point of what we can deliver as an application platform. There's many other use cases that we can talk about. Hopefully you guys have some questions. But at this point, I want to kind of conclude the presentation. We're going to move into our Q&A session and see what we've got.
Hey, Craig, it's Jan.
Hey,
While we
Jan.
wait for some questions to come in, wonderful job, by the way. I learned even more. Um, we thought we'd ask a question of our own, which is Fuuz comes with a lot of built-in applications. So, in your mind, um, what particular one or two applications do people use most or are most interested in?
Yeah, that's a great question. We see that probably the number one thing is regarding iPaaS or the just systems integration as kind of a general topic, right? So think of other point solutions on the market like a Dell Boomi or a MuleSoft, Zapier, anything like that where we're connecting APIs and endpoints. We do a tremendous number of those projects, and we're
Yeah.
very competitive there. The other thing that's really big is MES, just extending and augmenting ERP system by adding operator interfaces that are streamlined, simple to use, easy to train. That's become very relevant, especially in the current situation we're in, trying to find workers, and sometimes they don't stay. So there's a lot of churn out there in the business, and the simpler those applications can be, I think, the better for retention as well as onboarding. So those are the two big ones. Um, yeah,
Great. Okay. So I see that we have some questions coming in. So I'm going to ask one from a member of the audience. And they have asked, what other ERP does Fuuz integrate with besides NetSuite?
yeah, that's a great question. So we integrate with NetSuite and Plex, obviously. That's the ERP that Mark's company is using. We've integrated with SAP, Oracle, JD Edwards, QuickBooks. We've actually integrated with other AS400s. So there's no limit. We connect with all of them. I forgot to mention Acumatica. And then outside of our standard connections that we offer, kind of those are off the shelf. We have the ability to integrate with any ERP that's got APIs available.
Okay. Great. Hey, I hope that answered your question. If not, uh, Kelsey, come back to us and let us know. Craig, another question. Does Fuuz offer recipe and formula systems, or is it another app or add-on?
That's another good, great question. Yes, as part of our machine integration, typically, or machine monitoring applications, we will have a component of recipe and formula maintenance in there. And that can take a number of different shapes and sizes, depending on the type of equipment or processes, but that's all pretty standard part of pushing and pulling into the PLCs, depending on what ERP system you have, or if there's an MES, or potentially using Fuuz as your MES. A lot of that activity can be automated. We have a customer here in Auburn Hills that we're pushing stamping press recipes in based on them changing their job in their Plex control panel. So it's all fully automated, lights out situation. Yep.
Okay, great. And we have another great one for you. Is there any application template that can be used to get started? We already have a FedEx integration, but would like to see other functions.
Yeah, definitely. We have a number of baseline applications or packages, we call them, including MES and WMS and TMS, and we're constantly adding to that. We also have a number of pre-built flows. So if you're looking to do, some other type of system integration, there may already be something out there. You can pull those in. We have a library of those things available. It sounds like you're already using the system, which is great. Thank you. Just contact us through support@mfgx.io, and we can definitely get somebody to point you in the right direction.
Okay. Terrific. We have another one. This question asks, what's the average time to implement and go live on the software?
It's a little bit of a loaded question, but yeah, that can be anywhere from a couple of weeks to several months, and it ultimately depends on the complexity of the solution at hand. We've done some fairly simple things like an iPass integration or EDI may not take more than a few days. Custom documents at ship time, same thing. But then we get into other scenarios. Currently, we're building very large scale WMS with, automated put away and automated picking functionality that's very customized to, for that specific customer. And that's about a 3 to 4 month project. So I would say the longest you're looking at for just about anything is in the 3 to 4 month time frame, but it could be much shorter than that.
Okay. And we have another question in a similar tough to answer vein. They ask, uh, how long does a customer run on Fuuz before they start seeing benefits?
um, well, I love that
Immediately is
question.
the right answer, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's an immediate. I mean, one of the big thing is that, right, the customers are coming to us because they have a problem, and generally those problems can be uh, readily quantified, whether it be with dollar savings or time savings. And so, as soon as you go live on a Fuse solution, you're immediately seeing the
Yeah.
results. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Terrific. Um, I know we talked about some identifiable challenges in the industry. I wonder if you want to give an example of a solution. I've heard you mention a story of trying to connect a payroll service to machine operator um, time. So
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that and the value in that solution?
Yeah, absolutely. That takes us back a ways. That was that was one of the first projects that we had ever implemented with our application. We had a Plex customer um, on the west side of the state of Michigan, and about 15, 16 locations. Their HR team, between onboards and offboards on a monthly basis, it was about 750 transactions, new employees, people leaving. It was a ton of work orchestrating, just the flow of information between ADP and Plex. And so we were able to go in there and automate a number of the transactions. We were able to create users in their Plex system just when they added new employees to ADP with, all of the relevant details in Plex. And then on the flip side of that, their supervisors would approve time and those types of elements in Plex, and those would get transmitted to ADP, eliminating a lot of the manual export import kind of work that their accounting department was doing. So
Mhm.
literally saved them, I don't know how many dozens of man hours on a weekly basis, just managing the flow of that data back and forth. But yeah,
Mhm.
that same story kind of resonates through a number of our food and beverage customers as well. We do a lot of e-commerce integrations in that space. So there's a lot of time savings that can be had when you look at your business processes holistically and take a step back, and wonder if, is there some way that we can automate this process? If they seem very redundant and repetitive, then 9 times out of 10, Fuse can step in and automate those things for you and save you a lot of time so those people can go and do more value added activities.
Great. Thank you for that. One more quick anecdote before we bring this to a close. This is the one where an OEM, who shall remain nameless, but is the biggest manufacturer of electric vehicles, um, you were you were helping someone win a job with that particular OEM. So tell us about that,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, I don't know how you find out about all of these things, but yes, very interesting. We had a customer approach us and say, "Hey, we're competing for some business with this OEM who shall remain nameless, but is the largest electric vehicle manufacturer." Um, and they had a challenge, right? So it was a product they already make, but there were some additional requirements that were necessary in order to compete in the business, which involved some very specific barcoding, laser etching, QR codes on their parts, very granular piece level traceability, just things that their current ERP system wasn't going to enable them to do. So we stepped in, we built them, a ground up MES solution to run their plant floor for this new line. We're capturing hundreds of high resolution images of all of these parts through their various quality checks every day. We're creating the transactions in their ERP, printing these very unique barcodes, and pushing information to their laser etcher for those parts. Ultimately, they obviously won the business. Um, we won the business, and that OEM that shall remain nameless was extremely impressed with the solution that was delivered. None of their they're the only supplier in their entire supply chain that's able to deliver the level of traceability that these folks can deliver with our solution. So yeah, it was very successful, and that was about a 8 to 10 week implementation. So that was even better because we got them up and running very quick.
No kidding. Great. Craig, I see that we're at time, so we should wrap up the webinar. Any parting words or offers? I see we also have an invitation, like if you would like to learn more about Fuuz, please don't hesitate to reach out either on the website or uh, on social. But Craig, I'll let you
Yeah.
wrap up the webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jan. And I just want to extend my gratitude for everybody again taking the time today to join us, and thank you, Mark, very much. It's so great to have you as a customer, and feel like we have been able to help you and your organization so much. Really means more to us than anything. Um, Obviously, you're a great reference. I know you're always willing to to speak to people. So really appreciate that and your effort to helping us put this together. I want to, obviously invite all of you that attended today to check out our website, fuuzplatform.com, schedule a demo, reach out to us. We're happy to talk about any specific cases that you might have. The answer is yes, we can do it, but bring it to me anyway, and look forward to hearing from you.
Terrific. So everyone, again, thank you for your time and attention. On behalf of the Market Strategies team, Amanda Freeman, Susan Bachman, and myself, Jan Nichols, thank you for being here, and we hope to hear from you soon. I should also mention that we will be sharing a recording of the webinar in just a little while. So take care, have a great rest of the day, and we hope you'll come back to our next webinar, which is scheduled, I believe, on June 8th. More about that just a little bit down the road. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.